in suggestions as far as what we still need to talk about, what we need clarifications on. Some of this information we covered last time, but people felt that it needed to be readdressed again. So here we go. The first item up for discussion is mandated numbers. And some folks are still having trouble with the mandated numbers. Please remember that the mandated numbers is not only for the varsity teams anymore, it is for all high school teams. So your freshman, JV, and varsity teams need to follow the mandated numbers for the division that their school is. So if they have their mandated numbers in round two, then round 1 and 3 need to match, and then we're done with it. But if they don't if round 2 doesn't meet their mandated numbers, then they need to not supersede whatever amount of competitors they put on the floor in round 2. So we're going to look at some examples of this. So in round 2, let's see if I can pull this over. Goodness gracious. Don't want to do that.
Do you want your chair stuff? What are you going to do?
I don't need my chair stuff.
Okay. In round 2, and I do apologize if this isn't really hitting the screen. In round 2, it says under the mandated divisional competitor numbers, on right here, number 1. So we all know that Division 1 has to have 12 competitors, Division 2, 10, and 8, and then 6 for 3 and 4. So if they have under their mandated numbers, and I'm not able to pull this over. Yep, it's taking me at the wrong time. Sorry, ladies. Anyways, it would be 10 points off. Okay? So they're under their divisional mandated numbers of competitors, and it would be 10 points right then and there. Then you need to go back and you need to look at round 2 or round 1 to see if they had any kind of differential above, if they had anything above the number that they put out on the floor. No. This way. Nope, it's not doing it. I'm sorry. It all fit before, and it's not fitting now. So what you would do, I wanted to show you the penalties here. So under the divisional mandated numbers is 10 points. Round 2 was round 2 is under the mandated numbers, and round 1 exceeds the number. So the example that I had over on this side of the screen was that it was a Division 2 team. They put out 9 competitors in round 2, so they received this first penalty, which is 10 points. Then in round 1, they competed with 16, which was obviously above 9. So they would receive a 22-point penalty. So the total number of penalty points that they would receive here on the round 2 penalty sheet would be 22 and 10, which would be 32 points. Okay? So then what we're going to do is go to round 3, and this is really bad because the numbers were here. Let me see if I can. That the number of competitors, it would be a void round. Ah, here it is. Round 2 is under the mandated number and round 3 exceeds the number, then this would be a void round. Okay, everybody understand that? So if round 2 meets the mandated numbers, then only round 1 and round 3 need to match. If it's less than, then we can't ever have a team go above. Now when you're in the pre-judges room and you're going through your score sheets, if you happen to see, which you should be seeing, that there is a team that's competing under their mandated numbers and round 1 and round 3 are above those mandated numbers, then you really need to have a discussion with the coach whether or not she understands or he understands that they're going to receive big-time penalties and avoid round 3. A lot of coaches might have an injury and they feel that they just want their team to be out competing on the floor, and they're willing to take all those points. They just want to get scores. and so they're okay with that. But I just want to make sure that they all understand prior to going out there that this is what the penalties would be. They're still going to be scored by the panel, but it's going to be a void round. Okay. Now, for middle school, it's a little bit different, but this is also new this year. It's just a 4-person differential in middle school. So here you have, this is their second year, round 3. If they compete with exceeding the differential of 4 competitors, then it would be a 10-point penalty, and it would be assessed in this round. Okay. So that's mandated numbers, and it's not an option. I had a couple officials who said, well, you know, they had an injury, so we just didn't give them the penalty. Or it's a JV team, it's a really small school, and we just didn't want to give them all those penalties. This isn't an option. You need to assess these penalties because they're written. So whatever is written is what you need to go by. It's like the letter of the law. So you can't pick and choose who you're going to be giving the penalty to. You just have to do it. Yes, it's really horrible for that team who might have had an injury or might have had somebody sick, or they're a small school and they still want to put out a JV team. But, you know, this is what competitive cheer has mandated, so we need to enforce those rules. Okay? So please, 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 you can't pick and choose who you are or who you're not going to assess that penalty to. Okay. Uniforms. This was a question that came from one of the officials, and particularly with teams that are wearing the shorts and the tighter fitting shells or tops. I think it's called a unifit or something. Anyways, their issue was you know, the team starts when you're in a static position. The rule says when you're in a static position, if the midriff is not exposed, then it's not a penalty. If it is exposed before they even start, then it has to be given a penalty. Okay, so it's on page 13 where it says it's illegal to wear a top in which the midriff is exposed. And then your case plays on page 65, it's case play number 5 and number 6, where they specifically talk about a team who's wearing a midriff in the static position, or a team who's wearing a shell that might show a midriff. They would expect them to wear kind of a bodysuit underneath it. So, if a midriff shows during a routine, is it a penalty? No. As long as when they started and their midriff was not showing at the beginning, then it isn't, you cannot give them that penalty. No matter how terrible it looks or how much you really want to, once again, the rule says in a static position, is the midriff exposed? So, if it wasn't to start with, and then all of a sudden they do their first, you know, tumbling and stunting, and somebody's belly's hanging out, you cannot assess a penalty because when it started off, it was covered. So, excuse me, that would be under illegal uniforms, and that would be a 4-point penalty in all the rounds. Okay? On page 13, the bows. The bows are like the sock penalties of years ago. Bow material needs to be soft, and it needs to be soft and palatable, I guess you would say. So, you know, you can't give a penalty if they have the bows in their hair and they're soft. Now we get into the problem where they have all the, you know, that fun glitter that the parents use, that the glitter was embedded into the ribbon and everything. So I guess, you know, bows are bows, and we talked about hard, like a bow that was made with a hard piece to hold it together, and said that that was illegal. So that was last meeting. So I think that's all I'm going to say about bows. We're having some discussion about forward suspended rolls and inverted entrances. And it specifically comes when the flyer's in a push-up position. The coaches are writing push-up position and the flyer is doing a suspended roll. Or they're doing a suspended roll from like a flat back, face down flat back, and the flyer has her arms out in a T and hands in a fist, and the bases are holding her wrist. Same thing with this push-up position, the bases are holding her wrist. The rule on page 53 for suspended rolls specifically says the flyer maintains continuous hand-to-arm contact, or hand-to-hand, hand-to-arm contact with the original bases or the back spotter. So just because your bases have, or back spotter has contact with the flyer, that does not meet the rule. So what we've been seeing teams do is when they're in a push-up position, they're starting to call them inverted entrances, because your inverted entrance rules on page 57 say that you can begin in a push-up position prior to an inverted entrance. But what I want you all to remember too is the bullet point that says the skill must include a spotter who protects the head and neck and shoulders of the flyer, and that spotter must maintain contact with the flyer as the flyer goes through that inverted position. So when her head is down until she's in that vertical position again in a sponge or in a stunt, then there should be a flyer, or the spotter needs to be maintaining contact all the way through. Okay? So this is the stunt that we are talking about, and hopefully this will work. Oh, goodness gracious. Nope, it's not going to allow me to show you an inverted entrance.
Do you have that on your desktop that you could just play it from your desktop?
Yeah, let me just minimize this. Okay.
I think you have to escape.
Okay.
End show.
Okay. It'll work from here.
There we go.
Okay. Now, this is what we're seeing. So here, what you're going to have to see is, if this is the base, she's going to have to maintain contact on that head and shoulder rotation, which will be really easy for them to do because all she has to do is just keep her hand on there as she rotates around. And then that can be considered an inverted entrance.
Can we see it one more time?
Absolutely. So right now this is illegal because nobody has their hands on her, but either side, if they had her hands like right here, as she rotates around, then they would be okay. Do that one more time. So somebody has to take the lead in being the spotter. Even though they wind up being a base, it could be that spotter on the way around. And we see that a lot with inverted entrances that are in, like in a, excuse me, that are in a handstand as they go around. So somebody's got to be responsible for this part of this flyer's body all the way around. Okay? Okay. I think I'm going to keep it on the screen if that's okay with everyone because I can move things around. So the next issue that we're having are 360 rotations. And 360 rotations are scattered throughout our rule book. And I think the scattering became more evident when we went to just single rotations. Remember, we used to be able to do double twists and things. But we can only do one rotation now. So on page 46, it says a twist with no more than one complete rotation can be performed to a cradle, except when you're side facing, okay? Page 60 talks about twists in a toss. There's another spot in the book that alludes to no more than one rotation, and that's on the floor skills on page 39 that I didn't include in this slide, which it says that it's called a flip or a salto may not involve more than one head over heels rotation, and those were floor skills. So with that said, there was also an update because we had some folks who were at the fall conference that said, well, hey, if you can start your suspended roll in any position, what happens if you do a backward suspended roll from a face-down position? That's going to give you like 1.5 rotations. So what about that? And so MCJA did an update and said a brace suspended backward roll from a face-down flat back position ending in a sponge would be illegal since the flyer rotates more than one rotation. Okay, so this is encompassing a lot of rotation. It's the twist that goes down to a sponge. It talks about a twist that goes into a cradle. It's talking about head over heel rotation, but that 360 rotation encompasses a lot of different skills that teams are doing. But there's one skill specifically that I wanted to show you, and I'm going to show this to you many times, and it's going to be slow-mo. Okay, so first you're seeing this, and what's your first impression with that? That flyer went around 2.5 times, right? Let's watch it full speed again. Okay, so now I'm stopping it. Okay, so there she goes. So she's halfway around. She's not quite 360 yet. Okay, so there she is, 360, because her back, once again, she started with her back to the front. She's rotated around. Now look at her feet and the hands and all of the bases, because this is what's really important. Right now she's 360, which is legal, right? Mm-hmm. Now here she goes. Those bases all shifted. That's why I wanted you to shift your view from the flyer to the bases. And I'm going to back this up so we don't have to watch the whole thing again. But here you go. Okay? At this point, her bases are already starting to move her around and finish off that rotation. Okay?
Cindy, can you hit that little rotation button that is to the left of your play button so that you can turn that video?
Left of my play. Here?
Yep. Does that not rotate it? Darn.
No, that just play again.
Not rotating. Yeah, I tried to get these so that they would be upright. I am so sorry.
That's okay.
But let me see, because I'm going to try and stop this as she goes through that rotation. But this, that's why I'm showing this, because we have to make sure. Yeah, she starts with her back to us. She's doing the rotating. Kind of, I can't stop it that way. But look at now, from this point, all of her bases move, and the flyer does not move anywhere. Okay?
Right.
So, when we watch it full motion, though, it's kind of like, what the heck did they just do? All the way around. Yeah, there you go. Okay? So that's why when I was first sent this video and a question about it, I had to stop it, like, a lot. Oops, sorry. I didn't pause it enough for you guys. Let me do this again. Okay, so there's her 180. Or that was her 360. Now her bases are starting to move her. Okay? Her shoulders in this one look like they kind of go past the 360, but her feet, if you look at the bases, hands, and the back spotter, it really is a 360 with the 180 with the base rotation. Okay, just one more time, and we'll just do it full. Yeah. Okay? So I just wanted to show you that because there have been questions regarding that recently. Okay, timing, and this was a really interesting question that was posed by Sheila. She had this happen when they were competing, or when she was judging. As you know, round 1 and round 2, minute 30, round 3, 2:30, we all know that. Page 12 states timing begins with the first word of the routine. The ready set is part of that routine, even if they say 1 and they start to like go down on a knee in the mat. Whatever that time is, the first word that comes out is when it starts. And the last second is when the last competitor is off the mat. So, in the penalty book it says 1, just your penalties for that round, or any, is 1 to 5 seconds over the time limit is a 6-point penalty, and anything 6 seconds or beyond is a 12-point penalty. But what happens if it's 2:30.68? Or what if it's just 2:30 on the dot? If we're going by what's in the rule book, we cannot give a penalty for this 2:30.68, nor can we give the 2:30. 2:30 is pretty much right on the dot, but this 2:30.68, the rule says a second over. This is not quite a second over yet. So even though you'd like to give them a penalty for that, you cannot. It has to be 2:31 in order for us to assess a timing penalty. Now, if we want that changed, that would be something that we would need to put in a recommendation for MCJA. But as it stands right now, neither one of these would we give a penalty for, but we could give a penalty for 2:31. Okay?
Cindy?
Yeah.
I kind of emailed this question, but if one judge has 2:31 or 2:32 and the other had 2:29, do you go with the 2:29 or do you assess the one that's longer? When they don't agree, what's the call so that we're all on the same page?
I would think that the call would be the benefit of the doubt to the team, and it would be the lower.
Okay,
the lower
that's what
one.
we did. We did that. I just thought, you know, it might come up and it would be something that everybody should follow the same procedure.
Mm-hmm. Now, when I'm officiating timing, if it's like, if I have 2:13 and my other partner has 2:14, we write down the 2:14 because we want the coach to know that we're giving you the highest time, except when it comes time to give them a penalty. I know that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but we're giving the team the benefit of the doubt, but we want them to know that, they're give them the higher one in their regular, if it's not over, but if it's over, then give them the one that's the lower.
Okay, that's kind of what I do too.
Yeah, but in this case, Sheila said that they both had 2:30 point, somebody had 68, the other one had 59 or something. So both of them had that they were over the 2:30 mark, but not quite a second over.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, once again, flatbacks. Flatbacks are going to continue all season long. The flatbacks are like V-sits of years gone by. Flatbacks. On page 48, they say, if you're coming from the floor, the flyer jumps into the flatback, you need 3 catchers. Okay, so 3 is the number from the floor. If you're coming from a stunt, or if you're coming from a sponge, if you're coming from anything that flyer is not on the floor, you need 4 catchers, the 2 original bases and 2 additional bases. And please remember that the rule says between. We're still having teams that the back spotter on a elevator or on an extension is staying behind the flyer, so her feet are like in her chest. So we're still seeing that. And a bracer cannot be considered one of the catchers. And this, we had this issue this weekend too, where the bracer, the coach was counting the bracer as her as one of her catchers. But you have to remember that there was that additional case play that was put out last December that stated that, and this was the case play, exactly this. A flyer's in a braced extension with one bracer holding both hands or arms of the flyer. The flyer transitions to a face-down flat back with 3 catchers and maintaining contact with her bracer. It's illegal because in a flat back transition from a vertical position to the horizontal position between at least 2 bases and 2 catchers. So that bracer, this person right here, can never ever take a place of the catchers. Okay, so that's still going on. And I'm going to show you a video, and this is sideways too, so, you know, I'm so sorry, but they won't rotate for me. This is illegal because there's only 3 catchers, but I wanted just to show you that again because that's the only video that I had from a stunt of a face down flat back. But this one is pretty good. This one will show you from the floor. So she jumps up into the flat back, only 3 catchers. This one, they kind of lifted her into the flat back. She didn't actually jump into it. So, but it's the same. It's the same. All 3 of these guys were between her. So nobody's back at her feet. They're all between. Okay. And that's also showing you that you can do an inverted forward roll now this year from that.
If she was back at her feet, would it still be okay?
No, because it says between.
Between, okay.
Uh-huh. Yep. Good question.
But why is that not considered between still?
At her feet? If she was,
Yeah.
oh, I think what, no. She was, the position that this flyer was in, or the catcher at the back was fine. I think what Jane's question was, is what happens if she's here, straight on, like her feet are in the chest. Let me stop it. So what happens if this person was at her feet, like with her feet in her chest?
Right.
Not here.
My question is, the flyer is still between all of those bases. Why is she not considered between just because she's at the feet?
She is considered between, Julie. I said, what if she wasn't?
What happens if this girl was standing right here?
Right.
So her feet were in her chest or her belly.
Right.
That's not between.
Why? Why not?
Because
what is it? Your flyer is still all between, and your bases are still all the way around. You know what I mean? Like if she was at her, if there was somebody at her head, if there was somebody at her feet, the flyer still is right in between all of those catchers.
You know what? I think there's a clarification that I'm going to have to look up for you real quick, but it said between these because this is not between. This is
So we're just assuming that between means on the sides.
Yes.
Between cannot mean back or front.
Let me look. That is correct.
I'm not trying to be argumentative. This is just somebody asked me.
Yeah. No, that's the interpretation because if you look at the picture on page 48, that's the between. That's
So they have to be on. So they have to be on the sides.
Yes.
It's always what I've said too.
Maybe it should be written that way, that it has to be on the sides rather than between, because between could be, as you said, an interpretation. You know,
yeah, they're certainly still all the way around her, and you know.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The verbiage would say the bases need to be nose to nose. That would solve that problem.
It would. It would.
No, it wouldn't.
Well, if you look,
one at the front and one at the back. They'd still be nose to nose.
It could still be nose to nose.
Good point.
Yeah, because there is a legal face-down flatback that's on page 48 where the 2 bases or the 2 catchers have are faced like nose to nose, but then one of the bases is at her feet and the other one's at her like knees and thighs. So I think for the interpretation that MHSA has given us, that between means that they need to be to the side of the flyer. And maybe that's a good recommendation for a rule clarification, because it's really not a change, just a clarification.
Right, just exactly where is it supposed to be, because,
Yeah.
somewhere.
Side of bases. Okay, I made a note of that. So, or side of flyer. Okay. Alrighty. All right. I want to go to middle school, and this was another request that we talk a little bit about middle school, what they can and can't do. Now, middle schools, whoops, I went too far, sorry. Middle school flares. And that's usually where we come into issue with middle schools, is what kind of flares can they and can they not do. And on page 76, it tells you what's illegal, all their illegal stunts. So let's just start with flares at the extension level are illegal, except when they do a Cupid or when they do a double brace Liberty. Both of these have to have still the front and back spotters. Okay? And front and back spotters means that they have to be in that same position, that touch, watch, and away. They have to be away from the stunt, watching the stunt, and touching. And they can't be touching the flyer's feet or the base's hands. Okay, so they have to be in that spotting position. Twist cradles from an extension are illegal, but it says in the book that a full twist to a cradle or a 360 flare may be performed by middle school teams. So, some coaches in middle school read this. Full twist cradles, 360 flares can be performed by a middle school team. That's in the far left-hand column. In the same page in the right-hand column is when you get this twist cradle from extensions are illegal. So those things they just need to read the entire book, as well as officials, because sometimes we don't read all of it either and start to assess things that we shouldn't. There was a clarification that came out last year that brace release transitions are allowed by the middle school teams. And let me just go to the next page. I think I have that. Sorry, I'm really messing this one up. That says that middle school teams, it was this clarification here, can a middle school team have a brace flyer that moves from a sponge position and tucks her feet, kind of like a ball up, losing contact with her bases, then brings her feet back down to her bases. This is legal, and that was in the clarifications from last year that gave that exact same scenario, that they can do that. Now, can the middle school teams move in an extension? We saw a lot of this, where they would put up the extension and they'd have the front and the back spotter, and then all of a sudden they start to move. They either rotate it around or they move 5 steps or whatever. That is a flare. So they would not be able to do that. So this one right here would be a penalty for them. Okay. We've already talked about the twist cradle. 360 flares are a vertical twist by the flyer up or down. So sometimes we're seeing 360s down and 360s up. So it doesn't give a limit of where it goes to. So there you go.
I do have a question that came in.
Okay.
I don't know if you see it or not. It's about a tuck cradle from the extension level for middle school.
They can't.
No flares.
Yeah, that would be considered a flare. A tuck cradle would be a flare. So I would say that they cannot do that.
And also.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, if it's at the elevator level, they can do whatever they want at the elevator level.
Right.
This was from extension, the question was.
Like, no.
And the other one is, can they do the T drop to a face down flat back in middle school
From an extension?
from extension?
I would, once again, I would say that that's a flare.
Yeah.
Isn't that a flare transition? Okay. All right. This is another question that came in about unsafe team member contact. We have unsafe team member contact in all 3 rounds, page 82, 84, and 86, which is an 8-point penalty. Team member contact that's unsafe, and that is kind of, it leaves a little bit of room for interpretation. What's unsafe?
Cindy, before you continue on, can we go back
Sure.
to the middle school because we got another question about
Sure.
the middle school. They are asking, can you clarify where in the manual that it states that, like a T drop, does it just say that flares, or are you interpreting it that the flare from extension level?
Well, the book says the only flare that you can do from an extension level is the QP, but we're talking about transitions.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's something that we could have clarified about the dropping.
Okay.
I'll write that down. My initial interpretation would be that it's a flare of some type.
Uh-huh.
So it would be illegal coming from from the elevator level, but let's look at transitions. I'll find out for you. And we can have that next week when we have our breakout session. We should have an interpretation by then.
Hey, Cindy, if it was braced, would it be okay?
According to the middle school additional clarifications, it looks like it would be. Because it says that middle school, it says that the flyer does not move through an inverted position. Middle school is not allowed to do a forward or backward suspended roll. The flyer has at least 2 bases and a spotter. There's a spotter for each bracer, and the bracer has continuous contact with the flyer. And during the flyer's loss of contact with the bases, the flyer is in motion, and the bracers must be at shoulder level or below.
But this would still be with the flyer coming from an extension.
You know that the brace, that's what this interpretation says. But once again, I think that we do need additional clarification with it.
Right, because all of the, all of those things, we're all picturing kind of the same stunt going on where the flyer does the splits in the middle, and then she might fall onto her back, and then she might, go face down or face back or whatever. She's braced the whole time. All of those happen at elevator level. They're not at extension level. And her bracers are at elevator level, so should be okay, I think.
Yeah. But like I said, we'll get the official word.
Good. Okay.
Okay. Okay, unsafe team member contact. Round 1, it specifically says inappropriate, unsafe contact, executing jumps. Now, I had a safety official who asked me if they could give a penalty because there was a team that they were doing round 1, and they kept running into each other. The kids were just, really, they were banging into each other. And they wanted to give a penalty for it, and I said, well, no, because it says unsafe contact, executing jumps. And round 2 is the same way. It's inappropriate, unsafe contact, executing gymnastic skills, tumbling, and jumps. And then in round 3, it includes everything, includes stunting. So, if in round 1 you do have that contact with the bases or with the competitors, and they kick when they're doing one of their jumps, this is where you would assess it. It's number 14, team member unsafe contact. So to me, that would mean that they're kicking and somebody would maybe fall to the ground, or I just thought it was unsafe because they were so close and there was that potential for injury. In round 2, it's number 18 for team member unsafe contact. So this is when, you know, their tumbling's too close and they hit each other while they're doing some of their tumbling. Please remember they can touch on splits, even though the splits might be really close, or they might have some issue when they go down into the splits and it looks like it's unsafe. The splits are the only one that we cannot give a penalty for. And then in round 3, it's number 15, unsafe team member contact. And I think the issue comes in where, what happens when the flyer comes down, this is a really good one, is that they're doing the 360 downward, and the flyer sits on her back spotter's head. Or the flyer kicks one of her bases in the face. Some folks are thinking that that's really not unsafe team member contact, but all of that would fall under that category. So it's just not in the tumbling realm when you start to stunt and you're getting people that are kicked and hit, and it's really unsafe. You know, that's when you would assess this. And I do believe that's what had occurred with one of the officials, is that somebody got smacked in the face and they didn't want to give them the penalty. And please remember, nobody means to do something incorrectly. So, you know, the cheerleader, you know, the competitor, if the flyer smacks her face in the face, she really didn't mean to do that. However, it's unsafe team member contact. And once again, just like the mandated numbers, you must assess that penalty. If you think that was bad enough to warrant an unsafe contact, even though that base or flyer didn't mean to do it, or back spotter didn't mean to get her head sat on, you still have to assess that 8-point penalty. Okay. This next one is also something that came and wanted to be talked about.
Yeah. Cindy, before we move on to that you just had up, I had a question.
Sure.
Collapse, years ago, used to have a definition somewhere in the book that referred to head, neck, and shoulder. I don't see in the book where it does that anymore. So
yeah, it's on page...
more than just head, neck, and shoulders?
Well, you're talking about page 16 and 17.
Okay.
And on page 17, it's talking about the deduction chart that says if a stunt, flare, proper transition that was completed but falls to the floor and the flyer lands on her face, shoulders, hands, arms, knees, or bottom, that's a very serious mistake. But on page 16, at the very bottom of the third column, it says, execution errors are not to be confused with spotting errors. Safety judges deduct for spotting and tumbling errors, or when a stunt falls or the spotter does not attempt to catch the flyer, break the fall, a safety judge penalty for 8 points is assessed. Team member contact that is unsafe when cheerers execute gymnastic skills, tumbling, jumping, and stunts is an 8-point penalty by the safety judge. So they're leaving it up to us to decide what was unsafe. So it does say it in the book, but it's not, they don't have to specifically hit their head and shoulders. Now they can fall anywhere. If it's unsafe, it's unsafe. Okay?
Thank you.
And then here is where it also says contact during the splits cannot be considered unsafe. So that's on page 16. Okay? All right, so back to injury. Judges will stop the competition when an injury or blood. If it's blood, it always has to stop. Injury is kind of, you know, do I go and stop it? Do I not? When you see it, you'll know it, believe me. Warrant stoppage to the performance. So at that point, this is where all the confusion comes in, and this is on page 16. What choices does the coach have when there's a stoppage? The team can be scored up to that point and be done with the day, or the team can be allowed to repeat the round, but the panel will only begin judging from where the stoppage occurred. So if they did 2/3 of their cheer, only the last third of their cheer will be scored with what else that they saw before the injury occurred. So,
Cindy,
yeah.
can I ask, so let's say that they have an injury and they're going to come back out and perform, but before that stoppage happened, there were penalties. So you still go ahead and give those penalties because it happened before the stoppage, right? Even though they're...
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Everything that occurred from the time that they started the routine until the injury, the panel score stands, the safety penalty stand, and then we begin from when that injury occurred.
Okay, just want to clarify that. Thank you.
You're welcome. And sometimes, you know, this page we have to go over because it doesn't happen a lot. And last year there was a team that had only one stunt sequence left, and I'm like, you really want to go out there and do that? You know, you were doing really well up until that time. And the coach came out, she goes, yeah, the team wants to do it. And I said, well, what do you want to do? Because you only have, you know, one more. You're at the end of your cheer. Do you really want to come out and perform the whole thing? You know, because they have to replace the injured person too. So, but it's up to the coach, and they have those two, and those are the only two options that they have. And yes, this is the only time that says that they will be put at the end of the routine to give them some recovery time, or at the end of the rotation. Actually, it states. All right, the last thing that unfortunately I need to speak on, and this is always, I don't know why we have to, but we do. On page 15, judges of competitive cheer are required to wear a solid white blouse or shirt or top with solid black skirt or dress slacks. It's not off-white. It's not gray pants with black stripes. It's not black pants with gray stripes. It's white on the top, black on the bottom, and you can add a blazer or a sweater, but it has to be black. Please know that yoga pants are inappropriate for competitive cheer. And that's what we were seeing. Just recently I received an email from someone who said that they officiated with someone who was wearing yoga pants and a tight white shirt. So we want to look professional out on the mat. Even if you're doing panel, you still have to look professional. You know, safety has that view most of the time because we're walking around the mat. However, just be very careful. It's white and black. And then the last item that I do need to talk about is in the judges room.
Before you move on,
sure.
This question asks, is there any suggestion for how to not necessarily confront, but to speak to an official that you're officiating with concerning that?
Excuse me. If you know the person, it's a lot easier than if it's somebody that you just met. I always like to just do general things like, hey, you know, I really like, you know, that new white blouse that you have, and you know, it really fits the white and black, you know, and then maybe say, maybe you know, yoga pants really are professional, and maybe next time you officiate, you might want to think about, or next time you officiate, you would want to wear a black dress slacks or a black skirt. But it is always a tough conversation. But if you approach it in a positive manner, sometimes it's a little bit easier rather than confrontational, making it positive. Like, you know, you look really nice in those. However, on page 15 in the rule book, it says this is what we're supposed to wear.
And then this another question asks about scarves and shoes. Are there do's and don'ts?
Scarves were not part of the wear. On page 15, it says specifically that those are the items that you're supposed to wear. It doesn't say shoes, but I would think something that's appropriate to go with black and white.
Hey, Cindy, I think a really good way that I always try and think about it is that it's not about me at that time. It's only about the teams. And so really I want to kind of blend in and not stand out. And so, you know, by just wearing the black and white, we just are uniform but yet not drawing attention to ourselves because it's about the kids out there.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
So I just kind of think about it that way.
The last piece is in the judges' room. Prior to the competition, in between rounds, after the competition, please don't talk about other teams. I had a coach call me and talk to me about that. Who one of the panel officials was talking about her team from a previous competition, and a friend of hers was officiating also. And so word got back that this official was talking about her team and wound up being not even her team. It was one of her lower level teams. I don't know if it was JV or freshman or middle school or whatever. However, it just, you know that professionally we shouldn't be talking about teams. We shouldn't go in and say, wow, you know, I just saw that Podunk High School and they looked great last week. Or, boy, are they really struggling this year. Or they're not as good as they were in the past. Those kinds of things should not be discussed in the judges' room because you never know what relationships other people have. So you kind of need to save that and go home and talk to family members that, you know, you can might not even be interested in share, but, you know, that's your only way to talk about it because it really comes back and when you least expect it. So please don't discuss other teams that you've seen throughout this year, issues that you had, even if the coach made you really upset and you had to give them a unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, you shouldn't discuss that the next time. You know, that coach was really mean and I gave her an unsportsmanlike conduct. It's not something that you should be discussing. Not at least specifically. Never ever mention teams. So that's what I wanted to talk about is with the professionalism because unfortunately both of these incidences have come up just recently. So.
Is that your last item?
Yes, because the last one is questions.
Okay. This was emailed to us and it asks round 2 unison.
Uh-huh.
One girl counts out multiple skills. Do they get 1 8-point penalty for cheer not choreographed in unison or a penalty for each time the girl counts out a skill?
I do believe that would be 1 8-point penalty because it let me just read what it says. Let me look at the score sheet. It just says vocals and round 2 must be in unison. So I don't think that it's really, that it really would be each time that they did it. I think I would just give them 1 8-point penalty. And that would be it.
Okay, and then this one is on page 87,
Okay.
round 3 penalty sheet. Number 14 says performance sequence does not match routine description form submitted, a line times 4 points, another line. However, then on round 3, second cheer, junior high, middle school on page 97, number 12 reads incorrect routine description dash improper sequence, 4 points. There.
That's probably something that has to be clarified when they update the book to make sure that it matches.
Okay.
Because if you look at the rule number 14 for on page 87, It says 4 points will be deducted if the coach submits a completed round 3 routine that does not match it. And I do believe it says case play. It gives you a specific amount of what's wrong. So if it's more than, and I'm sorry I don't remember off the top of my head, but if it's like half or more, then that's when you give the penalty. It says it's a significant amount.
Substance and sequence or something like that.
Yeah, it just, let me see if I can find it real quick. But yeah, those two, thank you for bringing that up. We'll make sure that those are matching. And usually the score sheets do match, but I think when they changed them around last year, I don't think that maybe they caught those two things.
Cindy, if they were to write their skills correct onto the panel sheets for round 2, but they didn't correctly write their skills onto the safety sheet, do you give a penalty for that?
No, as long as one of them is correct. That happens a lot.
All right, just want to make sure.
Yeah, as long as one of them is right. If they're both wrong, then absolutely they receive the penalty. But as long as one of them is correct, then we don't give that penalty.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else?
There does
Thank
not
you, Cindy.
seem to be any other
Yeah,
questions.
thank you, Cindy.
Oh, you're welcome. Good luck with the rest of the season. I think we might get one more Safety Sunday in, but we'll see.
I appreciate
it.
We have the breakout sessions next week, so hopefully everybody will attend those too. All right, have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, Stacy, for moderating.
You bet. There were a few questions this time, so.
Yeah. All right.